Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from across the globe. My name is Kathleen, and today I am with a special artist who's been with Etchr before, but is now returning to do a gouache course. And today we're going to be doing a live demo as a promotion for that wonderful, wonderful gouache course that he has prepared for you. So if you guys can hear us and see us okay, please type llama in the chat, say hi, let us know where you're viewing this live stream from. How is it there? It's getting cold where I'm at. How about you, Andrew? Is it warmer, colder?
It's getting warmer.
Getting warmer. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hi from Ottawa. Trisha, hi. Joey. Okay, I see llama. Awesome. All right. And while I wait for more people to join in and get settled, before we begin, let's see. Okay, before we begin, if you have any questions for today's live demo, please feel free to use the chat and type them here. Llama from NC, 84 degrees. Awesome. Okay, so again, we will. I'd like to officially welcome everyone for today's live demo. Is an introduction, part of the Introduction to Gouache course by the one and only Andrew. I'm doing this with my hands, so it's so weird. But before we begin, again, everything you'll be needing for today's live demo, I will be dropping in the chat, including reference photo. I will be doing that now. That's a link to the reference photo. And also, if you want to check out Andrew's course, that is here in this link. It's also in the YouTube description below, so feel free to just scroll down and make sure to stick till the end because we have a giveaway for gouache brushes. So anyone excited to win an art material, like obviously who doesn't like art materials? So yeah, make sure to stick till the end because we will answer all your questions. We'll be doing a live Q&A at the end. Also, we'll be announcing the winner and I'll be explaining the mechanics for the brush giveaway. So all you need to do is just stay active in the chat and let us know if you're going to be following along. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor to Andrew so that he can introduce himself, talk about what we're going to be doing today, and talk about his course. So, Andrew, it's going to be all you.
Hello, hello. So yes, I am Andrew, and this is a little intro into my course. The course is going to be about gouache, about painting, about simplifying shapes and color and form to kind of allow you to paint whatever you want. And it's of all levels of painting. So if you've never painted before, the course is for you. If you paint all the time, the course is for you. If you just want some reminders and touch-ups on what you've already been painting, the course is for you. So also, if you never used gouache, the course is for you. So there's a lot of good things about it. It's really set up to just help you succeed with painting in general. So today we're gonna take a look at painting a smaller painting on focusing on shapes and breaking down this reference photo that I have here for you. But yeah, and I think this means that we can get started. So if I have the oh, here,
Should I
okay.
pan over to the overhead cam now?
Yeah.
Awesome. There you go.
Nice. Look at that, so much power. All right. So you guys all have the materials out there for you to look at. You should all have that. What I have here is a little pencil because it's going to be quicker to show you some of the shapes that I'm going to do. I have my brushes that I like to use, and I have all of the paints here. So let me go ahead and get them all down right now. When I'm painting, especially with gouache, there's a lot of different ways to keep it ready to get started painting, but I like actually putting down the paint myself. I like knowing kind of how much I need, how much I use, and it's just another form of kind of control with my paints because I feel like with painting, it can get out of control really fast. It's like sometimes you're just fighting with the painting. So something about putting down the paint itself kind of gives me that, all right, I am already in control. I'm choosing my palette, I'm choosing my colors, and I'm choosing how much I put down. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll go over the colors that they are once I get them all down. Here we are. So what I put down was permanent white, Prussian blue, burnt sienna, brilliant pink, and I went with the lemon yellow versus the permanent yellow for this one. I have those two are very useful, but I'm going to use one of the yellows, which is lemon yellow, and alizarin crimson. So this palette that I choose to use is very limited. It essentially is blue, yellow, and red, your primary colors, white, burnt sienna, which is a grounding color, something that we can use to put down as our initial underpainting, and then pink, which is something that I added in to the palette and learned that it is useful to help with lightening colors or making more interesting grays within the painting itself. So it kind of helps for blending everything together. So this is a very limited palette and I love it because you can mix all of the colors you need from this. And when you have a limited palette, you are going to be able to create harmony much quicker and easier. And you're not going to end up with muddy colors. You're not going to end up with a super colorful, crazy painting that doesn't really uh, kind of blend in harmony. So when you're limited, it's easier to do that. It's easier to learn, and then you're forced to learn how to mix all the colors. So, you know, that's always super helpful. So right here we have a little picture. I like when I'm working from references from pictures. The picture itself, it can be nice, it can be pretty, but the picture itself isn't like I'm not trying to copy how pretty the picture is. I just have a picture of something that I'm gonna make look pretty as the painter, and that's something that we do go over in the course on. You have the picture, but it is the shapes and it is the way that you interpret it that creates the painting and makes it beautiful itself. So we're gonna do that. So we're gonna look really quickly just in composition, and I'm gonna use the pencil to kind of just do some little shapes to show you guys. I like when I am doing the sketch, I'm not going to draw because we're not drawing, we're sketching. And I like putting down some main shapes that I'm going to focus on and kind of already plan ahead where we're going to go. So some main shapes that I see, first of all, street versus everything else is going to already give us a nice composition, a nice third composition. So I'm going to kind of bring down just the line where I want the street to work. Then this big pole on the side. I know I want to focus on that. And then this house that kind of comes around the center. So I know I want to have that. And I think even having a kind of the greenery is going to go up and this little pointing spot. See how sloppy this sketch is? It's just, all it is shapes, some shapes and some lines just to kind of show where I want to keep in mind as I'm going to be painting this. I'm not drawing, I'm not holding it like I'm drawing. I'm even holding it like I hold the brush, which is where I'm holding it at the end. And I'm just kind of putting in some markers to keep in mind that aren't going to decide what I'm doing. They're just gonna help. They're gonna help me along. So I can definitely fight with the lines. I can paint right over them if I really wanted to. But that's it for the pencil. Get rid of that and let's get into actual painting. Something you'll see me be grabbing a little bit too is this little spray. It's dry over here in Southern California, so my paint's always dry no matter where I am. So I like having a little spritz, so that way it actually stays moist. And I'm gonna grab the big brush. That is in there, a 1-inch flat brush. So that way I have to paint big on this small area. Now, and yes, please attempt to paint along. I'm not going to go too quickly. I'm going to kind of just be inching my way forward as we get there. It is smaller, so I can do the whole painting as we're talking here. And again, feel free to leave things in the chats. I think we're having a question at the end, but I do like to talk a lot while I'm painting, so I will definitely try to answer along. So as we start, I'm going to go ahead and grab the burnt sienna, and I'm going to keep it almost like watercolor. I'm going to keep a lot of water, a little bit of paint. So what that's going to allow me to do is have a very thin beginning to this painting, and to kind of build thin to thick. I like to do that because it keeps it from becoming muddy. When it's thick on thick with gouache, suddenly you're battling. That's a skill for later. At the beginning, I like to really kind of learn how to start thin, go to thick. It allows me to paint on top of any mistakes that I will definitely do, as we all do with painting. So I'm gonna go ahead and literally just get this like watercolor, get this thin, get this wet, and just go ahead and lay in the entire painting. So I'm gonna give myself an underpainting. This is gonna allow me to just get rid of that white, because for me personally, I don't know about you, I don't like when there's white to start off with. It makes me nervous. It makes me feel like I need to do perfection as soon as I get started. So I like putting just the grounded underpainting. The reason we use burnt sienna is it is a little warmer, so that way as we put the cooler colors on top, it still keeps that warmer feel kind of coming through. It balances out the color temperature of the painting. You can use other colors underneath once you start painting and experimenting. I like sometimes using the yellow or the pink, but for today, a nice standard burnt sienna is something that we do. There are painters other places where they actually just use toned paper that they paint on top of, because it does that for them, but we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to wait for that to dry, and I'm going to clean this up. And we're going to go ahead and start separating our first shape. So the first shape that I like to do is, now that we've got this ground color, I want to shape out the sky. We're going to go straight into two shapes. There's something I like to call the first read, where if you were at a museum and you were walking by and you see the shape, just this big shape, maybe two, three shapes, and then it makes you want to get closer to the painting, that is a first read. It's just a good composition. It's a good big shape that makes you want to see what is going on, because that big shape is interesting enough. That is our goal. So we're going to go ahead and mix. Gonna get some white, gonna get some Prussian blue. I use the
Andrew,
Prussian blue. Yes.
sorry, sorry to interrupt, but just to reconfirm, can anyone just use different underpaintings for today's demo, or is
Yeah,
that
you can
just
if
a
you want.
okay?
So burnt sienna is fine. You can try some of the other ones. If you want to follow along with me, like I said, I'm using burnt sienna. If you want to try a different underpainting, you're more than welcome to.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I think that answers Trishna's question. In fact,
Yes.
to your first read, sorry.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, underpaintings don't have to be one thing. There definitely can be different underpaintings depending on what you're working with. Some people use it to plan ahead on maybe big shapes that are already there. If there's a lot of green, like if there's a lot of trees, you're doing a forest, you're doing an outdoor landscape that has a lot of green, a yellow underpainting, a warm yellow works very well, because then you could build on top of that. It's planning ahead. But for this one, and very generally, burnt sienna does the purpose for of other, a lot of things. It tackles a lot of things for you, which is nice. So we'll move the light so I can, there we go. So let's go ahead and let's start getting in a little bit thicker. So more whites, a little bit of Prussian blue, so I can get the right blue. And I'm gonna go ahead and start shaping out the sky. I need to move the light, so work with me so that we can see and I can see. There we go. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and start shaping out the sky shape. I'm squinting my eyes and I'm looking to see And I'm ignoring those palm trees that are in the middle because when I squint my eyes, they kind of disappear. And I want to just separate everything from sky. And that's going to be my first shape. It doesn't have to be perfect either. Again, I like putting the edge of the brush to kind of the edge of the shape and pulling in.
So I notice you vary the strokes of your brushes. Is that like on purpose? Is there a purpose for that? Or don't, because before I think when we were young we were taught to like just color everything in one direction to make everything in order or something like that. I guess, is it the same for you?
It depends. So right now, because it is just the beginning, I'm using the edge of the brush to help build the shape. The shape is more important than the direction the brush is going in terms of like painting the same way. But there are situations which will, as we get further along, where, and I'll do it right here, where when you do paint the same direction, it unifies everything. But for right now, since we are focused more on shapes, I'm just focused on where the edge of my brush is to be able to make sure that my shape is what I want it to be. And then the good thing right now is because the color, we are just mixing white and Prussian blue, it's going to generally be in the exact same, it's going to kind of, the gouache will dry into the same shape anyways for right now. So let's not focus too much on brush direction. But brush direction does come in handy later when you're worrying about unify maybe all the trees, you want to capture more shadows, you want to show perspective just in a brush stroke. That's a little later. That's when you start painting bigger and you start worrying more about the brush stroke. But as we are staying smaller, we're focused mostly on shapes in this stage. But you are right to bring that up because later on, when you start painting bigger, that starts becoming very important.
Gotcha, thank you so much. We have people in the chat really excited to try this out. Some of them are saying they're new to landscapes, some of them are new to underpainting, so let us know how it goes. We're really excited for you.
Yeah. And the fun thing too is for this form of gouache and the way that for gouache painting and the way that I like to paint, notice that this is like landscapes are always like you think mountains and trees and forests and beaches, but I treat landscapes just with anything like man-made stuff as well. Sometimes cityscapes start forming into there where you're treating it the same way where you're painting in the same way, treating big buildings like rocks and mountains and trees. And if you do that, it feels the exact same, which is very fun. For me, I like doing other stuff rather than just traditional landscapes that you would think of. So anyways, so now we've got this. I've chosen to leave the underpainting going up a little bit. You see the pole going up on the left. I want to remember it's there, so I left the underpainting, so I didn't paint that. I know that the trees will be going up, so I left that as well because I see that tree going up that way. I decided to leave out the foreground, which is this tree here. I think it will make a better composition, and this is kind of my choice, and it's also your choice when you look at photos. I think it'll look better without the foreground element. I don't think it needs it, so I'm not going to put it in at the moment. But if I get done painting and I decide to put in the tree at the end, we all have that option. But I'm going to leave it out because I think the composition looks better with just the trees going up on the right. And I'm going to go ahead and continue using this mixture that we have here, the blue. And I want to start working on bringing out the next shape. So it's two shapes, which is everything on the ground and the sky. I want to bring out the street. For right now, the street in the bottom, I'm going to kind of sandwich that middle right now. And since I already have this blue, I'm going to go ahead and go over to the pink or alizarin crimson, whichever red you have. And I'm going to mix that in and see if it starts coming towards more of a gray purple. As I see, maybe a little bit more alizarin crimson to make it pop a little bit more. And this is where I start playing with the mixture I already had. This was blue before, blue and white. And then now I'm trying to get this nice, cool purple gray to kind of see if I can pull the color out of the color mixture I already had. I'm gonna keep playing with that. There we go. And then talking about brushstroke, I'm gonna go ahead and get this gouache to be kind of like a middle consistency. It's a little wet. It's got a little more gouache in there, but it isn't watercolor. You can see it's not see-through. And I'm gonna see if I can bring the brushstroke just from the left to the right, even with all of the little, even with all down there. Kind of just go over a few times. Notice that I don't really go and paint every single thing in all the time. Sometimes I leave some of the underpainting coming through.
Yeah.
I like the way that,
Mhm.
that feels as I am working on it. It does look like icing. um, I like the way it feels when some underpainting peeks through in some of the areas. It leaves that kind of feel of, again, you are the artist. You get to play with your mark making. You are not painting a perfect rendered picture. That's a different form of painting. This is painting for the sake of just capturing the essence of what you are looking at and leaving some of those mark making fun, like leaving some of that underpainting peeking through and the edges or within it itself. It adds to it, and I think it actually unifies the painting itself, because then you got some of that burnt sienna underpainting peeking through throughout the whole painting, and that just brings it all together.
That does make sense and really
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a weird thing
Um,
with the eye with only with paintings. It's like only in paintings, and such a silly artistic like concept that like you tell someone that's never painted, and you're like, what? Why don't you just cover everything? And then you're done at the end and you see it and you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. I get that it actually it without knowing why it does it, you see it bring the painting together.
so I guess you just have to try then. And I, speaking of trying, I think some of us, some of the people in the chat are actually following along, and they do notice that the gouache looks like icing. I'm pretty curious if that's more of the texture or the color. Let us know, but I want to grab that opportunity to talk about the properties of gouache. Um, how do you say is it? How is it different from watercolor, acrylics, or different other mediums?
It's different and similar in a way that it has the ability to feel like you're using all of them. It has the ability to feel like watercolor as it gets really thin, and it works the same way as watercolor, where it is reworkable when it is thin like that. It has the ability to feel like acrylic when you're not putting a lot of water into it, and it covers itself. You can paint on top of a shape you've already put down. And it has the ability to feel like oil, where it's wet on wet, and you're painting so quick, and you're kind of more what I call like carving into each other's shapes as you put it down when you paint with oil. So it has the ability to feel like all of them, but then it dries matte, which is the gouache, um, which is the whole thing about gouache is it dries matte versus drying shiny, which is acrylic. So it has abilities to feel like all of them, but I think that's what makes gouache special is you could use it in different ways that only gouache can be used. So quick jump, because I have yellow, some lemon yellow on my brush. I'm gonna mix green, and I think if you were to tell anyone that you were gonna mix green, you would just start blue and yellow. But again, you're gonna see me work from the same pile. I'm gonna work from the edge. This already has blue in it, correct? It has blue. It has a lot of other stuff, but it has blue. So I'm gonna take the yellow and I'm gonna start here, and I'm gonna see what it takes to bring out a green. I am going for a slightly darker green. So I'm going to start with the yellow. I'm going to pull from this purple. It's just yellow. It's getting a little greener. It's not there yet. And then now I'll bring over some of the blue. So what I like to do is pull from the same color mixture. So that way it's kind of like sourdough bread. That's my favorite analogy that I keep using these days is where you take that starter, you go to the next, you make more bread, you take that starter, go to the next, make more bread. It all comes from the same thing. It's kind of the same thing with mixing my colors. So that way, all of the colors are going to be harmonious because it has a little bit of the other color in it. Once your color mixture has a little bit of something, it's never going to be a pure color. it's going to be a mixture with that color in it. So it may be subtle, but it will make a difference as you're mixing in. So now we do have the green. I do want a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more of that yellow in there, a little bit more Prussian blue. And then one thing I'm going to add is a little bit of burnt sienna. I want it to feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more foresty of a green. So some burnt sienna is going to add a little bit more warmth and brown to that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, just like the sky, I'm going to start shaping out where I see green. You got to squint your eyes to make sure that you're focused on where the green is in all of this. And I like, again, keeping the edge of wherever I see any square architecture buildings, little house. And I'm gonna even push some things that maybe not be perfectly green into green because it's close in the same value. It's close, and when I squint my eyes, it kind of becomes green. Okay.
Interesting question in the chat from Virginia. So,
Mhm.
does gouache dry lighter as watercolor does?
It dries darker. It tends to dry darker. Some of the colors will act a little bit differently. It does dry differently than what you put down. But what I have found to deal with that problem is as you paint more with the gouache, that tiny shift of color change as it dries isn't enough to change kind of the main value you have been working with, especially if you are, let's say you're like right now we're starting with big shapes. If you're already thinking about value in these shapes, which we do in the course where we talk about at the beginning, those are the main things that you're worried about is your shapes and your values, and that allows you to push and pull things. Then even if it dries a little darker, it doesn't change much. And what you do is you're working from the color you just put down. So where right now I'm now on my third color, this color was informed by the last color that I put down, which in form will decide the next color I put down after this. So that's how I deal with color and if it changes or anything. As I put this color down, it's deciding the next thing. Color works next to each other. It's I can't think of the word right now. But when you have two colors next to each other, that's gonna kind of change how each react. If you put one color down, that's not enough to see how it's gonna affect the rest of the painting. But as you put the next one, you put it next to each other, that's gonna change how this one reacts. Then you put the next one down, that's gonna change how that one reacts. So when you're working with your colors, you just want to kind of keep moving forward, but let your painting inform where you're gonna go with the next color.
That's really interesting. So, in a way, that's where the oil painting kind of concept comes in with gouache. Um,
Yeah,
and somebody in the chat to add to that, I feel like with gouache, let's see, so interesting. It does a dance like watercolor in water, which is, I think, what gouache is really about. And oh, we have a question from someone in the chat. Does the quality of gouache matter?
I think so. I think like the quality of any of your art materials matter. That is the the truth about art. Its materials, which sucks to say. You can make any piece of art with anything you get. You can get cheaper materials. You will be able to use it to create a good piece. It is not gonna hinder you from creating art, correct? But if you have better materials, it is easier to use and it is easier to push further. I think better materials like gouache, a better gouache will allow you to do things that not as good quality gouache won't allow you to do. Sometimes you'll end up with something that the gouache feels more. what was the right word? Jelly-ish. It feels more like it feels more like that. And because of that, then when you're mixing I think the binder in that gouache doesn't work as well. So once enough water gets in, it just kind of becomes watercolor and you can't bring it back versus gouache that has, better quality. So you get better mixtures. You can push and pull it a little bit more. So it's stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you can paint with anything you get, which is why when people get watercolor, doesn't matter what kind you get, you can create a nice painting, but people put the money in for the nicer watercolors or gouache or oils because of how much further you can push that material. It just makes it easier. You're not fighting the material. If you're fighting the material, then that's gonna keep you from just enjoying the painting. And let's be honest, when it comes to painting, sometimes what keeps you from even just doing anything is just setting up and just having it ready. So the easier you make all of that, the more you paint.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes. So while we look at the chat, let's jump back in to see. Right now, I've already put in all the greens, and notice I put all the greens together. I went for a middle kind of tone green that's not too light, not too dark, so that way I can then separate within it. But right now, I just put it all together. I've got the greens on this side. I put all the bushes in the front together. I put this little area together. There's like 4 trees here. I also went over the sky. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I put it together so that way, just looking at this, you start seeing the painting starting to form. You've got the street, you've got the sky, you've got this little green here, and you got these little spots. And you're like, oh, what's going on there? What's in this area? So it's starting to actually build already. And with that, let's go ahead and work with the actual building. So we're gonna, again, go on to our next shape before we start breaking down the shapes that we already have.
Interesting turnout for these color mixes, and I think that's also what sparked the curiosity for people in the chat. Do you always use this color set for your paintings?
I stick to this one. The only other 2 colors which are not put down right now for this one, but it is in the course, is this uh actually the cerulean blue. That's not the right blue. Cerulean blue and permanent yellow is the other 2 that I have in this. Again, this is a very limited palette that I have found to be able to paint the way that I like to paint, and it really also helps in starting because you can mix everything from this. Essentially, it is red, blue, yellow. It is a primary color palette. So if you have a version of red, a version of blue, a version of yellow, you're able to mix any colors you want. This specific colors that I have, the Prussian blue, the alizarin crimson, the permanent yellow, and the lemon yellow, those have a lot of hue in those colors. They have a lot of pigments. So I'm able to, we're gonna do this real quick. I'm able to take something this dark, something like a Prussian blue, which is that dark, and with a little bit of permanent white, get it to get that light and have that much saturation still in it. A lot of times when you start bringing in white into colors that are already desaturated, you can't get that nice hue out of it, yet nice saturation. So I don't want to carry around 2 blues, 3 blues, 4 blues, just so that way, I have all the different values and I have all the saturation. No, I want one because I take these out when I go plein air painting. So I don't want to carry a lot. I also usually only have one brush during those moments. And notice I have a few other brushes. We're gonna have fun with those later because we're here at home and we're able to, take it a little further. But when I'm out in the open, I just have one brush, 5 or 6 colors, and I like to be able to paint everything from that. So that is something that I like to do. All right, so we're gonna mix a nice little off-white with off-white. so that way I can kind of play around with the sidewalk and with the building itself, and I can paint on top of here. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some white, and yeah, off-white you can be making with a bunch of different colors. It's all about just the amount that you're putting into it. So little bit of the pink. I could already start skewing it away from white. I'm gonna go ahead, and since the blue is right here, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull it in. Again, I like working with stuff I already have here. Even if that blue was just to show you, it was already next to it, so I'm gonna pull it over. There we go. And let's go ahead, a little bit thicker. I want to go ahead and start seeing what that looks like, because with white and with these colors already down, I want to see if it is the right value. So in order to do that, I just have to put it down. And already it falls within the saturation that I like, within the value that I like. And I'm going to go ahead and stick with this. This almost falls more in the shadows. And I'm going to stick with that. Let's stick with that for right now. It's almost like the white of the shadow, but I like that. I like that we already mixed that. So I'm gonna work with that. Maybe a little bit more white so it gets thicker.
Andrew, just a quick segue. What is the
Yes.
material of the palette that you're using? I think you're pretty much intrigued with that.
I can't hear you one more time.
Oh, sorry. The palette that you're using, what material is it?
This?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. The palette is a glass palette that is toned gray underneath. I like using this palette because unlike watercolor where you use a white palette, with gouache or something with oil sometimes. So with gouache, I like using a gray palette because it's already toned. So you can see the way that the mixture looks on tone when we are painting on tone. It may not be the same color tone, but it is the same value toned most of the time. So I like using a gray palette for that reason. And glass, I just love how easy it is to clean. It's reusable. So that's my choice of a palette.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And to just to reconfirm what which part of read right are we now?
One more time.
We're on the second read now at the moment. Is that right?
Right now yeah, that's a good thing. So I didn't actually say that. So right now we're in the second read, which is as far as we're going to go. And on the second read, we're already starting to paint into the shapes, the initial shapes we put down. So the second read is when you get closer to the painting and you are now looking to see, oh, that big shape, it's a mountain. Oh, within that shape of the mountain, there's a cave. Okay, okay, okay. I see it now. So that again, just think of yourself at the museum looking at paintings. The first initial shape, you don't know what it is, you just know you like it. The second read is when you get closer and you start noticing what is what. That is how far we're going to get to with this small painting. There we go. So now, again, just like everything else, I have begun pulling out the shapes. So we got this. I left a little area for the window, mostly so I remember that it's there. Again, a lot of times, just like this pole that we've left here, I'll be painting and I know this, a really stark different shape that is there and I want to leave it. Notice that also I'm starting to paint into the green a little bit. Things like these little breakthrough shapes through the shapes of the green itself. Because if you look at the picture, you see that white kind of peeking through the leaves of that bush, and it starts giving kind of more of a personality that it's not just a big chunk of green that you can't see through. It's actually just a bunch of leaves. So just to infer that, I like putting in little shapes just to kind of break through. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start bringing the sidewalk down. And now talking about the direction of the brush stroke, instead of just streaking it all the way across, I want to be a little bit more delicate with this. So I'm going to just up and down, top to bottom, just kind of bring that sidewalk down and bring it out. Because if I squint my eyes again and look at that picture, the whites and the sidewalk is very close to this value. So I'm going to just put those together. And I'm going to correct what happened here, where I went a little too far with that side, with that green. And so notice already I'm starting to paint on top of what was there before. Starting to paint on top of that green to kind of ease that up, paint on top of that green, so that way the sidewalk just goes through. So with gouache, you can fix, which is nice. You know, with gouache, you're not, especially if you go from thin to thick, you can fix as you work forward. You're not stuck in what you've done. You can play with that. You can fix your mistakes. Painting is fixing your mistakes, and if there was a medium to do that, gouache is that. So now we've got all that down. I want to go ahead and I'm going to go back and I want to clean up this little pole. I'm going to mix something for that. And then I'll finally go into the greens and we'll start kind of separating that a little bit, just a little bit to give the greens a little more personality. Actually, let's do that now. Now I want to do it. So we have this green here that we were working with before. I'm going to bring it back to life. That's the thing with gouache too, just like watercolor. If you give it a little spray, it comes back to life and you can keep using it. And we're going to go darker. And again, squint my eyes, take a look at where I see any dark greens. And right away, I see right on top, the back tree is a bit darker. So I want to capture that.
So someone was asking in the chat if the recording will stay here in the YouTube channel. Yes, so if you won't be able to follow along completely throughout this whole recording, then that's okay. Or if you are watching today and will follow along later, then yes, feel free to go back to this same recording. But if you're here live again, feel free to just stay towards the end because we'll be doing a giveaway, so really exciting. And yeah, really interesting questions here, Andrew. By the way, I'm just piling it up for our Q&A, some of them, so you can expound. Yeah. Oh, someone's watching on their TV for a bigger picture. I can just imagine
Ooh,
how
I'm
that
on
looks.
TV. I did it, mom. All right. So playing with now, we're gonna kind of from this mixture get a little bit more right in the mid, since I'm bringing more yellow to get a little bit lighter. Because what I want to do is go on to something that's not so dark, but I want to find some more shapes and separate. I like treating like when trees start being kind of going on top of each other and you got like a foliage that you've got layers to it. I like really chunking them, creating little chunky shapes. Chunky shapes are very fun to look at. It's very satisfying in paintings. Again, I keep going back to museums, but go to a museum, look at those shapes of the trees and of rocks and stuff, and they just start getting chunky. They have these volume to it. It's volume that is very attractive to the eye because your eye likes kind of completing the puzzle of whatever you're looking at. So instead of having something fully rendered, pictures are nice to look at, but paintings are nice because you've got these big chunky shapes, you've got abstracted shapes, you've got simplified shapes, and your mind gets to kind of fill that in. So now, talking about those big chunky shapes, I've got this nice thicker green that I'm working with, and I'm starting to play around with, all right, each bush in that front. Now, when you squint your eyes, it's hard to see, but you understand that each bush is kind of like a chunky little round shape. So I'm putting that in right now. I'm inferring that kind of in the front. I'm not going to go all the way through because it does get lighter as it goes from left to right, but I'm able to now put in a few more, and now it starts building its own little shapes as we're kind of going forward. Everything is, it's inferring, it's giving the eye something to grasp onto. And that one in the back, or back to the one in the back, is a little darker again. So I want to mix a darker green. Green is a fun color when you're painting because green has so many forms and so much. There's so many ways you can show green. You can even have a color that's way more gray, and then you put a yellow or a red next to it, and suddenly it looks green. The amount of times that I thought something was green, and then as I get closer to look at it, it wasn't. It was just the color that's next to it that made it look green. So green is a very fun and very difficult color all in the same time to work with when you are painting, but it is one of my favorites because you can get a lot of shifting within it. All right, I'm gonna stop and take a look back a little bit. It's something I do where while painting, I will stop and look from further to make sure that I'm happy with where the values are, where the shapes are. And now that we've put this one down, squint my eyes, I think this can still go darker. So since I have this darker green again, I'm going to go a little bit darker again. And this is what we're doing right now because the painting lends itself to already be focused on this house. So anything we do around it is kind of uh, is going to help bring this out. We're framing that house itself. So I want to be a little more abstracted towards the edges and then a little bit more controlled in the center because the center is the important part. There we go. And last but not least, we've got the little palm trees that we've been ignoring. So let's go ahead and bring those shapes back. Squint our eyes, see where it's beneficial to have the palm trees. And I'm just going to keep them as little blobs. But I am going to put in the tops of those palm trees. There we go. And we'll keep those there, and they will help us later as we continue painting. Now, something I want to do right now is as we start getting to smaller shapes to help finish this off, we're going to put in the window, and then we're going to focus on some smaller shapes that help define this, like the sidewalk, and then the top of the house has got a little bit of red. So we'll bring those out. We're getting closer towards the end already, believe it or not. So let's go ahead and get a window shape in there, and we squint our eyes. That is just as dark as the green, so whatever color we mix has to be the same value as that green. I'm going to come out of that green since we already have it, and instead of trying to copy it, I'm just going to work with it. So I'm going to bring red into that green because that is the contrasting color. So that way it already is changing it, bringing a little bit of blue. And now from that green, we've got a darker color. It's a little bit in the purples. So that way I can go ahead and get the shape of that in. Now notice I use the sides of the brush to make sure I got my corners. Because even though, again, I'm not painting to be perfection, especially at this shape, at this size, I still want my window to look like a window. So I'm using the corner and I'm pulling down. Then I use the right corner and I pull down. So I'm using the brush to do the work for me instead of trying to pencil that in, right? And since that value was perfect, I'm going to go ahead and put a little shape for this window over here.
It's really
And there
interesting how you're using just this big brush up to the tiny details. Well, tiny for now. um,
yeah,
yeah.
I will switch to a smaller brush when we get bigger. I will use a smaller brush here now at the end just to add a few things, just because I've got these wonderful brushes from Etchr, so the ones we're giving away later, so I want to use them. So I'm going to show how to use that, which I would usually keep for a bigger painting when we're in our third read, but we will use that to add for like these little lines that kind of come down and just little fun little additions towards the end. But by using the big brush, I am forced to think about shapes that only this big brush can make. It keeps you from doing detail. If you start small, I had a student in another class that I was teaching that started with a small brush, and he was a fantastic painter. He's a wonderful painter. But when we got bigger, we started using big paintings, and he still had that small brush. Suddenly, that small brush was a tiny brush, and when I told him to use a bigger brush to make the bigger painting feel better, uh, it kind of broke his brain a little bit, because the little brush that worked on this size didn't work so well when we were painting bigger, and he had already been so used to holding that little brush. If you have a big brush and you understand what big brush shapes can do, it really just benefits you, especially coming from small paintings to bigger paintings. And then when you finally get to use the small brushes are meant for the end of the painting. Small brushes are meant for the end. So I I highly, highly recommend always using the bigger brushes first. So that way you know you're just setting yourself up for success towards the end. When you start painting bigger, you already know how to use a bigger brush, you already know how to think in shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and get the burnt sienna. I'm going to mix that into the whites. I'm going to have to give myself some more white here. Burnt sienna, white. And what I'm trying to do is get a burnt sienna color that will not pull too much away from the values we already have there, because sometimes burnt sienna can come off really hot. Hot meaning really saturated. And then I'm going to use the edge of the brush, and I'm going to stamp in the top of the building. There we go. And I really like this color, so I'm going to bring a little bit more burnt sienna into that. A little bit of pink to give it a little bit more saturation. Pink will add in saturation to a color that already exists a lot of the times. It'll also, instead of white, sometimes I'll use pink to lighten it, because again, a lot of lessons into this, so I'll get back to the painting. But white will desaturate a color when you're making it lighter, but pink will also make it lighter without fully desaturating it. It'll keep some saturation in there, and I love that. I love not having to re-enter saturation into the colors. So sometimes I'll literally just do that. Now, as we're doing the pole, to me, a pole can get very boring. I don't want it to be boring. So as I'm going up this pole, I'm gonna add in a little bit of color, different colors as I'm moving up, with the base being burnt sienna. So first it was pink, now I'm adding a little bit of the yellow. I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow, add a little bit of white. This is just one shape, but I'm having fun changing it as I move up. Because also, if I look at it, I think it does change. I think that it does get more white wood as it moves up towards the end. So now I get from the burnt sienna to burnt sienna pink, burnt sienna yellow, burnt sienna white. It kind of moves up, adds a little bit to that. Such a nice, subtle little thing, but I love it. I love making little changes like that. And then I'm going to bring in the red into that exact mixture that I already have. And that will make a good color to stamp through as I move down. And again, I'm not being perfect. I'm just laying it in. And now we've got the road and something I totally missed, which is the top of here. Maybe some of you caught that. I missed it. So I'm going to bring that back in. There we go. And it's starting to form, right? We're starting to see the shapes come through. We're starting to see this build into an actual building or house, little side pole. We've got trees going on in the background. Let's mix this blue again. Let's mix this sky blue because now we have more of a use for it. We've got all these shapes down. Let's work on that again. I am going to clean up a little section real quick so that way you guys can see me mix. There we go. Let me get myself a little bit more white. And as I'm doing this, was there any questions that I missed?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. Some of them um, were from people who just came in, but I think we can, I guess, reiterate. Why is the pink useful? Why not just use alizarin in white? Says Charlotte. Again, welcome Charlotte to the chat. Would you mind repeating the reason for the limited palette that you have right here?
Yeah, so for my limited palettes, one more time. My limited palette that I've chosen is essentially red, blue, yellow. You can do it with any red, blue, yellow. I chose alizarin crimson and Prussian blue to be my red and blue because I can get a lot of saturated lighter colors from it. There's a lot of pigment in these colors. They're already really saturated, which makes them a little more expensive. Because of that reason, there's much more pigment in them. So also with the yellow, I carry around permanent yellow and lemon yellow. So that way I can warm or cool my palettes with a warmer or a cooler yellow. The pink is another option instead of the white where I can keep it saturated when I am trying to get a lighter color, or it makes really good grays, or it makes really good saturation in lots of other mixtures. So pink is very, very useful. It also makes for good underpainting. And that's what the burnt sienna is as well for my underpainting, as well as grounding my colors with a little bit more um, I don't know, it just grounds the colors a little bit more with some browns and some more earth tones, and that kind of works well, especially for painting landscapes. So this is my palette that I like. What I always tell people is it's a very limited palette. I can take it anywhere. It can paint whatever I want it to paint, but you can change a red or a blue or a yellow as long as you've got that red, blue, or yellow within your limited palette. I won't carry more colors because I don't want the colors to already be mixed for me. I want to do the mixing. And the more that I paint, the more that it gets more and more limited. The more that I lose colors. I used to have an 8-color palette, and it just gets less and less as I keep painting because I start realizing how much I love mixing the colors for myself to get to where I need to get to. It's just it feels more rewarding as a painter, but also I think you get better color harmony from it. Yes.
Wow.
Uh,
Those are wonderful answers to a simple question, and it just proves how much of a great painter Andrew is. And there are also a lot of questions in the chat about plein air, which I think we can expound on later during the Q&A. I think Andrew can talk a lot more about that. But there is one, I guess, concerned citizen in the chat. How does Andrew keep his brush so clean and quickly? I keep on contaminating my paint. The gouache is really sticking to the bristles. Thank you so much.
That's practice. There's no other way to say that one. That is practice on how you get your paints, how much you get from it, and how you wash it. I used to do a thing with my own challenge of you see my water is not that dirty. It's not that like color like if especially with we're using such dark colors that we're mixing with, and that is because when I do put the brush in, even when I'm not putting it in and like really cleaning, because majority of the time I want to use what's on the brush to kind of again mix the next colors, unless I'm starting something brand new like this sky, which I have to clean this again. Um, so there's that. There's also the way that when I am drying my brush and I'm using it, I like seeing the water literally kind of come from the brush. I kind of go over this in the class, but I like seeing the water come from the brush. So that way it's this kind of damp, it's wet, but it's not soaked in water. That's also a way that I use the brush. So it's like these little things that I have found that help keeping you from mud when you are painting with gouache. And that's in I think the first session in the class. But yeah, it's just a lot. It's practice on knowing how much you actually need from the gouache, and that helps a lot in keeping your brush clean. But I definitely go over that in the beginning on literally just how to get your gouache, how to mix, how to clean your brush, and how to put it down, and the different ways to put it down. So yeah, so at least you'll have that if you do end up seeing that part. But
Thank you so much. So I
all
guess
right.
practice, but those are wonderful questions already to begin with. So, yay.
Sometimes you want a better answer, and sometimes the answer is practice. But with the correct direction, practice, right? I'm not just like just go and keep painting. No, no, no. There are ways of doing it. It's just on how you handle the brush and the gouache and how often you do it. So something I did here while I was talking, I want to explain it, is I'm starting to pay attention to the edges of the things that I don't need to be so clean on. The 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 structures, the pole, the sidewalk, the street, that I want to be careful with. I want to be clean with my edges. I can lose some here and there, like I did down here, but I don't want to lose the edges, and then I lose the building shape. But the trees, I can have a little more fun with. The trees have a lot of leaves and frills that kind of go off into the sky. So what I did was I mixed the sky blue again, which I kept simple for a reason, so I can mix right away again. It is just white and Prussian blue. And I want to make sure that I get the correct value. So I want to make sure that it is the same brightness, the same value. That way, and I put it down anywhere. Let's just put one down. Let's see here. It is the same, it is around the same value, a little lighter. So that way I can carve into some of the other shapes again and have more interesting shapes. So what I did was literally took the brush, put it at the edge, and I kind of flicked it down, kind of flicked it and pulled up, flicked and pulled up. So that way I get these edges of the trees that start becoming more interesting. I'm also going to go ahead and go into, if we squint our eyes, we start seeing, oh, there is sky that pokes through in these trees that help kind of separate them. So I want to do that. I want to go back in and put these little light sky blobs into the trees at big form. So that way now I can see, oh, you can see the sky through the trees. You can also see that they are separate trees. And again, we're just doing shapes. We're just doing shapes. Stop, take a break, look at that picture, look far, and try and see where those shapes come through. You can get something a little bit more. This is going to be a little more pushing a little more into detail, but I think it's fun to try. Which is, if you look at it, there is a gate here in the bottom with the trees that's actually on. We're not going to paint the gate, but what if? I'm going to show you what happens when. What if I just put some lines there and I copy the form of the lines? We have a gate, right? So I'm not painting the gates. I'm not going in and painting the details. But with now we have all of these big shapes, we can go in and put a few other shapes to show what could be there. And you know, if there is a structure here, if there is architecture here, and suddenly you've got these lines here, there's got to be some kind of gate-like thing going on in that area, which is what I love about just the fact that when you're just painting shapes and you start bringing them out, they almost start doing the job for you of what are you painting. If you just, I had someone tell me one time when I was learning, and I didn't get it until I started painting a lot more later. which is if you just paint shapes and color, the objects will form for you. But if you get stuck on trying to paint, I need to paint this tree perfect, I need to paint this sky perfect, then you're getting stuck in rendering already. You're getting stuck in trying to make something be something rather than just giving into the fact that everything around us is just shapes, shadows, light, color. That's all it is. And it turns into something. It becomes something in itself already. So instead of sitting there trying to paint it, just squint those eyes, paint some shapes, paint some colors, get the values right. As you paint more, you will get your landscape. You will get exactly what you want, and it'll feel so much more rewarding. Oh, I almost put my paint in my coffee. It'll feel much more rewarding. So, all right. So here we go. We've got the painting here. We've got the trees starting to come out. Now I'll be putting some skies popping through. There we go. You can see a little bit better. Now we're going to kind of focus a little bit more on some detail shapes. Again, we're not going to get into details, but some detail shapes to help push and pull a little bit more. Something like the yellow on the pole, something like the little wires kind of coming down, something like the trunks coming down from the tree trunks. We're going to focus on that. And that'll be the end as we finish. And I'm going to allow myself, which you can do that if you have the brush, to go to a slightly smaller flat brush. So I still like the flat brushes. I don't go to round brushes until the very, very end of my bigger paintings, which again, I'll bring this out just to play around with it a little bit to show some stuff. But this is definitely the smallest that I'll go. And it's just a little bit more flat. It's easier to mix the colors quicker. So what I want to mix, but it is still just a direct copy of the big brush that I like to use. It's just smaller. So let's go ahead and mix a yellow. Now with yellow, I'm going to start with the yellow. Yellow will be see-through. As soon as you put it down, we need to add some more to it, some life to it. We got to add more saturation to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out the white just to give it thicker. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and grab some pink, because the pink will add in that opacity that gets lost with yellow. So that way I can go over something dark like this burnt sienna. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that way it actually comes through on top of it, and I don't have to keep painting over and over and over, because yellow will be see-through, which means that as you put it on a darker color, it'll just get soaked up. So again, that's why I mixed some pink into it, some white into it, and then the yellow becomes powerful enough to be able to paint on top of something darker, but also shows you what is available with gouache. You can do that with gouache. Because I have this smaller one, I'm going to go ahead and also, again, mix out of something that I already have. And I want to bring out this cool little, I want to bring out this little, there's some Prussian to get it a little more foresty, bring it with the greens that we already have. I love this little green up here that we didn't put in. And because I have a smaller brush, I want to go ahead and bring out that shape. Squint my eyes. There we go. Because I have, again, a smaller brush, I'm going to go ahead and use that to build a little bit more shapes around. And then bring out the pink into that green. So again, mixing out of colors that I already have to create a fun color for those branches. I'm using the edge of the brush. Here's some branches going up. I'm going to use that again for the tree trunk. And now we've got that going on in there. And then for the end of it, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit more with all of the antenna wires, not antenna, the wire telephone wires kind of coming around. Now, the thing with big lines in your painting is we don't want to actually draw a line. We want to kind of put in little shapes that will our brain will connect the lines, because if we put a big line in there, it's going to take away from everything. It's going to suddenly be exactly what we're looking at. It's going to be it's going to take away from everything else. But we do have all these nice telephone lines in there that can be a lot of fun. So instead of trying to mix like a dark enough color to capture what that is, we're going to keep it a little bit lighter but darker than the sky. So I'm going to go ahead and get some pink. I'm going to mix into the blue of the sky to make sure that it's going to be darker than the sky already. Maybe a little bit more blue, a little bit more pink. I'm going to have fun with it the same way I had fun with the pole, where it doesn't have to be exactly the right color, but, and I could change it as I'm working with it. So let's start with this one. It's going down from the top, and I'm going to stamp it in. Now notice I don't connect it. I'm just inferring it. So now your brain can connect it for you. Again, because I'm already working with that color, I'm gonna bring in some pink just to bring in some more differences. Connect, go right through. Again, now I'm starting to stamp in a little bit. Now I'm actually kind of excited because this color looks like a good color for this little line going through the pole. So I'm actually gonna bring that in. So this happens too, where sometimes you're just painting and you accidentally mixed a perfect color. So you might as well use it.
That's
So
exciting.
I get excited for that. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I didn't even know I needed that. But you're going right
Right.
over and you realize it is the perfect color. I'm going to use it. No one's stopping you from using that color.
Exactly. And we also in the chat can't get over the fact how useful pink is. So I think
It's so
someone in the chat,
useful.
right? I mean, someone in the chat is using watercolor by mistake, actually, but she has proven how this color palette that you have is also good with watercolor. So, yay.
Nice. Yeah, it's a all it's so much use for this palette. Took me a while to find it. Again, there is other palettes, there's other ways of painting, there's other uses for so many different things. There's not one way to paint. This is just one way. The way that I like to paint and the way that I like to teach is I like to give you tools that you can take and hopefully change and find your own way that you want to work with it. It's not kind of like you can only do this and everything else is wrong. It's not, oh, you can't deviate from it. Like, no, you can deviate all you want, because once you understand the qualities that I'm using and why I'm using it, you can choose to break it. It's like you learn the rules to break the rules. I'm a big supporter of breaking the rules when it comes to art, but you need to learn it first. And so hopefully in this class, you'll learn all the rules that I give only to break or skew them to fit what you like to do. But I promise you that the fundamentals that I give you will work throughout all forms of painting. Anything that I do here, I myself am a digital artist. I do animation, I work in animation feature, and I do this because a lot of times I'll figure things out that I bring into digital forms, ways of painting, things that I have to keep in mind, things that I worry about, things that I care about. And so this is a form of painting that you can take across everything. And so that's the goal and that's the purpose as we paint and as I teach this, is to learn things that you can grow with.
As it should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
There we go.
gorgeous. Looks even better up
Nice.
close. Are you going to
So
pull that tape off? This is the moment we've all been waiting
yes, I'm gonna pull the tape off. So before I pull the tape off, again, this is the second read. All right. Notice it is not a final painting. You can leave it as one, and people will definitely call it as final paintings. These small paintings are very cute, but I don't consider this a final painting. This is a goal to get us to the final painting. This is the second read. A final painting is when you've got the third read. The third read is when you're now focusing on where you want the eye to stay, where you want your lighting to be pushed, where you want to focus on the little details, which is where you would bring out this little brush and you'd be focusing on more of the details of the painting. That is where, but it would be a bigger painting, right? This is a small painting. This is a thumbnail. This is a study. This is so that when you do the bigger painting, you can look back at this and remember things that you did, how you started, how you layered, what you need to push. This is a study. So first read, second read, and then third read is where you finish. But I'm not gonna do third read. You could come to the class for that. So that's the third read, and then you bring it all together in one big painting. But now let's go ahead and take off the tape.
Oh my.
Now taking out the tape is always my favorite part too, because something about the edges of the painting being clean, it brings it all together. There we go.
That is gorgeous. Wow, I can't believe we did that for like a short amount of time. And yeah, I think everyone can do the same. And if you have followed along today, we are really interested in seeing what you have done. So, someone in the chat said epic.
Ah,
Absolutely.
thank you. There we go. Let's make it easier to see.
Yeah, thank you
There
so
we go.
much for that. And there we go. I am also flashing Andrew's Instagram handle so that you can tag him if you have followed along. Make sure to tag Andrew so that he can see your works. Or you can also send a DM if you're too shy to post your works yet. That's totally okay. So Andrew's more active on Instagram. Yeah. Let's see. I am also
Yeah.
dropping Andrew's Gouache course, which is a 4-part session. For those are all recorded. So if you feel like you don't have time, then that's okay. You can watch this anytime you'd like, and then there will be a live feedback session on June 23. That's 12 p.m. Eastern, Sunday. And what's interesting about a live feedback session is you get to submit your work, any of your work from whichever session you prefer, session 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then you can submit it to Andrew so he can critique it. So, yeah, that's really an opportunity for you to have your works critiqued by the one and only Andrew. And as they say, feedback is a gift. So, exciting.
That's where
Let's
all
see.
the lessons happen is the feedback and the paint overs. And I love doing the paint overs and pushing stuff. And that's where when I teach in person, that's invaluable. So I'm happy to be able to do that for everybody.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're also grateful for the opportunity. Andrew, you've been amazing in doing this live demo, and Andrew's put a lot of work into the recording. So, again, feel free to check out the collection link here, which I'm dropping in the chat. It is, there's an early bird price up until today only. So, make sure to grab that opportunity. And let's see. This was such a wonderful experience to paint. Thank you so much for the time with us. Yay! Glad you guys enjoyed. Okay, and like as promised, we will be having a Q&A and also a giveaway at the end. So let's do the Q&A first because I can see that you guys have a lot of questions. um, Most of these questions are recommendations. So let's start with the gouache, those related to the gouache technicalities first. Um, hmm. Okay, might have missed this earlier, says Thea, but is mixing out of the colors you already have done mainly to promote harmony within the colors on the page?
Yeah, actually, that's it. It's mixing out of the colors you already have is to create harmony. When you mix the colors from a smaller palette, it's kind of hard not to create harmony on the palette because you're already working from 4 or 5 colors. Once you start working
Right.
from a bunch more, you're picking and choosing, then you end up having this like rainbow unicorn painting because every color is already mixed for you, and you're just trying to find the right tube of paint. So that's it's hard to be harmonious in that way. I'm not saying it's possible. Again, you can paint however you want, but I have found that by limiting it, it really helps the harmony, the color harmony of the painting.
Absolutely. And I think you can check out Andrew's Instagram account. You can see some of his sample works and you would understand what he meant by that. um, okay. Do you ever use cat tongue brushes? I find it difficult to paint organic shapes with a flat brush. So I guess any recommendations to address that concern?
So when it comes to organic shapes with the flat brush, I find the reason why I use the flat brush again is it forces me to make big shapes. Once you start using anything that is more round, right? Anything that's more like these types of brushes, you're gonna find yourself focused almost too much on replicating the exact type of shape versus putting in a big shape with that big square brush and then painting on top of it to find that organic shape. Um, that's just what I have found. I have used the other brushes, but what I have found is that gets me, even after all the times that I have painted, it still gets me stuck in how do I create the perfect shape, and rather than allowing it to be abstracted a little bit. So that's why I stick to the flat brushes.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Okay, on to the next question is someone who has actually watched your gouache course before. Um, and just to reconfirm, I guess, trying to remember if in Andrew's class from quite a while ago, he said that he uses mat board as a cheap practice surface. Is that right?
Yeah, so in that course, I definitely talked about using Mapboard, which is definitely still an option. What I have found myself now gravitating towards, though initially more costly at the beginning, is the water blocks with paintings with all of the paper in a block, so you just rip it off and you start on the next one. What I found with that is I get just as much quality for all of the price that I spend, but I've got this whole block of nice quality paper that I can use and take with me everywhere. So I have moved on to that. I still like the way that it feels painting on something thick. I think it's nice that when you're done, you cut them into the pieces, and you got these little tokens because you've got the mat boards. So not against it. Still a very good option. Very cheap option too.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. It's nice to revisit these videos we had before. We see how our choices have improved, I guess. So speaking of that, what other um, gouache techniques or materials have changed throughout, or ever since you first taught that you wanted to share with us?
From the first class, the only thing that I have added and is I talk about using the pencil a little bit on being able to do what we did at the beginning of class, which is drawing it in initially, and then talking about using a slightly smaller brushes towards the end because we do paint bigger than we did in my first class. And also, I have refined the color palette a bit more. So those are the different things that you will find. But just like the first class, we start off with the exact same big flat brush. that is something that has not changed, and I don't think will ever change in the way that I paint and the way that I teach.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. And let's move forward to the next questions. Okay. More on the materials this time. Uh, can't find much info on painting with gouache. Are there any books you would recommend, or at least reference materials that you can recommend for gouache starters, apart from the course?
Yeah. Some of my favorite artists that paint in gouache. I think one of them, two of them that have books out. I honestly just to follow their Instagrams and take a look at them is Nathan Fowkes has beautiful is someone that I look at. Love his gouache watercolor stuff. He has a book out as well as James Gurney. They're not some old masters, but are still in our time versus going to the classic masters. They have done some amazing stuff. So definitely check those two out.
Just to reconfirm, that's Nathan Fowles, Fauz.
Fowkes,
Oh,
F-A,
okay.
yeah, Fowkes with the K. And then James Gurney. The Gurns machine. James
Right.
Gurney.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. All right. And those are wonderful references. Um, do you ever use ink over gouache, or in general, do you ever do mixed media?
When I use gouache, it is very specifically for learning how to paint shapes and not use line. Because again, when I work, when I do anything else, there is line work involved. But if your shapes are strong enough to not need line, then line is a nice addition. So that is how I paint. So no, I do not add line work or mixed media a lot of the times. The most mixed media I get is starting with watercolor, going to gouache. But the thing is, gouache can be used as watercolors. So I'm a one trick pony. I use everything with gouache and I keep everything in gouache.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And we still have a lot more. um, let's see. Okay, recommendations. Do you have any? Oh, sorry. What is your setup for when you are doing plein air painting? So can you talk
When
about it?
I'm
Is that a little different from your studio
well,
setup?
no, it's actually more or less the same. The only difference is I have an easel. I have a little pochette box, and that one is small enough to be able to take anywhere I need it and paint with. So there are a bunch of different pochette boxes to find online that you can do. I use the simple cigar paint box, where you add a hinge to it, you open it up, you can just paint with that. So I highly recommend that because then you can connect it to a tripod and set up and paint wherever you want. That is the only thing that changes. Everything else, because it's so limited, I use this exact same setup when I paint out in the open.
Gotcha. All right. Next is you have all right. What brand of gouache is Andrew using? The list of materials can be found in the description below, but I think Andrew can expound on the reason as to why he chose the brand that he's using today, and how did you arrive, I guess, to the brand that you use today. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to stick with Holbein. That's just my choice. I like the way that it is a little bit. It doesn't get dry as quick. It comes out the perfect consistency that I like to use, and it's good for mixing. Um, I'm not opposed to other higher quality gouache. I have used it. Nothing against it. It's a familiarity thing. I'm familiar to Holbein. I used to use Winsor Newton, not against that either. I found that Holbein was just better with how the consistency was to how I like to paint. But again, I think that all of them are great. It's just what you're familiar with after a certain point.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. And Tamara, thank you so much for helping me out on the spelling. Really great
Folks,
help.
yeah.
Let's see, brand of gouache, and I think this might be the last question. Do you ever use wet on wet in your gouache, because I think this question stems from the fact that they don't see much of the pigments flowing earlier. While that is possible, I think that's where this question was coming from. So,
Yeah, yeah. The wet on wet tends to be something I do when I'm out in the open painting, because sometimes the weather will dictate how quick it'll dry. I have painted in rain. I have painted in very, very cold weather where it refuses to dry. Where yes, I have done it. It's not something I rely on. If I do, it's usually in the underpainting. When I am Mike Hernandez. Yes, I just saw the name and it just completely derailed me. That one was one of my teachers way back in the day. He's an amazing man. He was the reason I paint the way that I paint, and he was my starting point and got me to love painting. So I highly recommend looking at him too. Anyways, back to it. I will do wet on wet at the beginning when it's in the more watercolor, kind of light opaque phase, because you can get some really cool mixtures for your underpainting if you're going to leave that underpainting shining through. An example is when you're painting like the beach and you got those rocks, and then you throw all of the underpainting and you got the nice mixtures that happen in the wet on wet. And then you paint the sides on top of it, and that rock still is that wet on wet underpainting. That's an example of playing with that. So I definitely do that, but I do it on for a certain reason. I don't do it all the time.
gotcha, gotcha. Thank you so much. Um, all right. I think I did not miss out on any questions. Let's see. Most of these are comments on such a wonderful experience, wonderful time to paint. Let's see. Okay, I don't think I missed out on anything, but if you have any additional questions for Andrew himself, feel free to reach out via Instagram. I'm again flashing his IG on the screen, IG handle on the screen. So feel free to shoot a DM to Andrew. He will be welcome, more than welcome to answer your questions. And
Yes.
as promised, we'll be having a giveaway of an Etchr gouache brush set. Really exciting because if you have this, you can have the tools, I guess, to get you started with your gouache journey. But like Andrew was showing earlier, you can just start with a flat brush to get you started. No excuses here. So go get started with your gouache journey. I will also drop the link to the collection link later on. Actually, right now. There we go. And on to our giveaway. So the mechanics are just simple. No need to type anything in the chat just yet. But I have written down a number right here. And then all you need to do is to, when I type go in the chat, when you see me type go in the chat, feel free to type any numbers that you guess is in the paper. Actually, let's do this. There we go. And then when I type stop, all the answers above it will be the only entries that I will be accepting. And then I will have it see it on my view, on our view, Andrew and me, here on StreamYard, so that we can make sure that you guys get it correctly. If no one gets the exact number here in the paper, then the number closest to this will win.
Oh
Range.
yeah.
I will tell the range now, actually. Okay, exciting. All right. The number ranges from 1 to 40. 40. And now I will type go. You have 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Ooh, that's a lot of entries. 2, 1. Okay. And I will type stop. See, now this is the reason why we have like only 10 seconds, because there's a lot of numbers in chat I have to review. So while I am scouring through these lovely entries, I would like
Wow, there's way
to
more
give
people
the
here than I thought.
exactly. I'd like to give the opportunity to Andrew to close the session and promote his course. So I'm gonna pan over to your screen first. Actually, um, yeah, let's do this so that you don't doubt that I'm changing the numbers. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes, we can leave it like that. Yeah, so I guess final words are again, in going over my course, I have created it for anyone that is just starting to people that have been painting for a while. I cover all of the basics. Your hair is the same color as mine. Nice. I cover all of the basics on how to hold the brush, how to paint with the brush, how to mix your colors, how gouache can be used. That is the first session, is literally just how to do mark making with it to benefit you as we go forward with the rest of the course. A lot of the questions that we brushed on just how to not let it get muddy, how to keep the brush clean. The way that I do all of that, I give you all my secrets. I also go ahead and I push again the shapes every class on how to get better with that, on how I give homework assignments as well, and just what I would like you to do with what you've learned. Things to give me something to do paint overs when I do that session when you come back in. It is to give you the basics, but to push those basics as well. So hence why if you already know how to paint, the class should still be very useful. And at the end, you'll have a bigger painting with gouache with all of the tools that I've given you. So taking something like this further.
Yeah, really exciting. And I myself am a witness to how Andrew has broken things down so easy. It's not the standard, intro to materials and then, the typical pattern for courses. Andrew has a unique way in explaining so that you can really go out there and do any subject you'd like afterwards. So, yeah, really interested and excited for this course. And going back to our winner, I actually saw the winner already, just to reconfirm. There we go. I am gonna flash the winner on the screen. Dun 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 dun. And the winner is, let me just. Okay, my camera is not doing justice, but this is number
32.
32. And the person who got it first is Diana
Woo!
Broadwater. Congratulations, Diana. You won an Etchr gouache brush set. It's an 8 pieces of gouache brushes that you can use for this course. So all you need to do is to message us at hello@etchrstudio.com. But we will also be reaching out to you. But yeah, if you're too excited to claim your gift, thank you so much, Andrew. He was featuring the
That's
gouache
that's
brush.
it.
Look
That's
at
what
that.
you won. Yeah, it's very nice there.
Yeah.
That's where I got this one. These brushes from as well. And by the
Thank
way,
you
after
so
using
much.
it right now, very nice brush. this
Oh,
is this
thank
is very,
you.
very nice. I can't wait to use it more.
Thank you so much. Congrats, you are so lucky. Congrats, Diana. Okay, let me just unpin that. How do we there we go. All right. So, congratulations to our lucky winner. And thank you so much again, everyone, for sticking with us for this live demo. So, I'm going to be dropping again the link to our collection link if you are interested to join Andrew's course. Again, the early bird promo is up until today. And we also have a class survey. So, if you really love or enjoyed this live demo, feel free to let us know how we did today, and we will definitely give that feedback to Andrew directly. So we really appreciate it. That's not going to take more than 2 minutes of your time, so really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Andrew, for that wonderful live demo. And again, we will see you for this 4-part session. Again, these are all recordings. It's all posted if you click on that link. And we will see you on the live feedback session. That's June 23rd, Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be live. Andrew will be there and he will give critique. So with that being said, Andrew, would you do the honors of closing this session?
Bye. I'm kidding. Thank you for coming. This is great. I loved all the comments. I love all the questions. You guys asked some very good questions, and I hope you enjoyed it and the answers that I gave. And hopefully, I'll see you at the next critique session.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you, everybody. Until next time, make more art. Bye for now.